both Trump and Harris have just launched their ad campaigns in those crucial battleground states. They're both spending big as well. The Harris for President team just splashed $50 million on an advert. Let's have a listen to this. An ad for Kamala Harris. Forward, not back. We are not going back being a sort of central plank of her campaign so far. Those ads, that's the Kamala Harris ad. Let's hear from Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's team are spending $12 million on their own. Here it is. Two very different tones, I think it's fair to say. Those ads are going to run on social media and streaming services and broadcasting cable TV, specifically in Pennsylvania, also Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona, some very important swing states. So, what makes for an effective ad in the US presidential election? Attack or defense? Which of those works better? How much of a difference could it really make? Let's discuss this with two eminent figures from the American political scene. John Leboutillier, former Republican congressman. Hello, John.
Hello, Daryl.
Always lovely having you company. Bob M Holland, who is a member of the Democratic National Committee. Hello, Bob.
Hey, hi, good evening.
Thank you, both of you. John, what do you make of those two adverts?
Well, both ads actually are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to define Kamala Harris, who's basically brand new to the race. She's been in it for 11 days. And maybe a lot of Americans might know her name, but they don't really know her. And she's trying to introduce herself, and she's in that commercial anticipating the attacks from Trump, which have been coming every time he gives an interview, that she's not tough, that she's not strong, that she's weak, all that stuff. And she brings out her record as a district attorney and attorney general to show that she's extremely tough and has stood up to bad guys, bad banks, and all that. And it's her way of saying to the people, here is who I am. And Trump is picking on his one big issue, which is the border and immigration, and trying to show that she was in charge of it, which she was not, and paint her in a bad light. And, we'll see over the next month which takes hold and shapes the impression of her. She doesn't have to do much to shape the impression of Trump. He does plenty of that himself, and it's a negative impression.
Interesting that, Bob. They're both, it's defense and attack, both of them really, aren't they? And I suppose a central question when you're considering your ads, which of those, Bob, is the most potent?
Well, two kind of introductory ads, now that it's been a couple of weeks since Harris was chosen or selected or suggested as our nominee. We'll make it official tomorrow by voting as delegates. But most TV ads for president have very little impact in the big picture. Harris, as a vice president, has to spend some money introducing herself. But what history shows in the last 30, 40, 50 years is the overall narrative. It ultimately decides this American presidential election. As former Governor Jerry Brown of California told me years ago, if you're running for president, it's the economy and security. And if you're running for governor, crime and taxes. Now, if an ad goes viral or millions of people are looking at it, that's a good ad. If the ad just goes on TV or cable for 10 million pounds or 20 million pounds and it doesn't go viral, that's an okay ad. So we have a long way to go. We've had a couple of good weeks.
Okay. That's an interesting point that Bob makes there, John, isn't it? That you in this day and age, surely you don't actually really have to spend that much money placing adverts like that when you can, and it's not always easy to do this, but create a viral vibe.
Well, yeah. Now, another way I would put it is the lower office you run for, where you get less media coverage, like when I ran for the House of Representatives, no one cares. So you have to buy TV ads to make people care. When you're running for president, that's obviously the most high-profile job, and you get all this free attention. Every speech you give, every rally you give gets covered, and you don't have to pay for it. Now, I think the commercials help shape the overall message, though. And Kamala Harris has a message, and it's why she's had this incredible 11 days of upward growth, which is she's new, she's younger, she's full of vitality, she's happy. we're happy to have her, all this sort of positive vibe that was sitting there, tamped down, sadly, by President Biden's bad performance at the debate, and actually had been going on for months beforehand. And let's face it, the public didn't like the choice between Biden and Trump. They're both old guys. To quote President Obama, America likes that new car smell. We like new stuff, the newest iPhone, the newest movie, whatever. And she's new, and it's all good. And on the other side, Trump. I mean, what is the message of Donald Trump? It's bad. Everything's bad. We're in American carnage. The American dream is dead. Everybody's bad. Only I am a good guy. That's his message.
Right.
And it won't work. And there are more voters who will vote against Trump than vote for him.
Right. So the message clearly as important. I mean, this seems like a stupid and obvious thing to say, but the message is as important as the tone of the advert, I suppose, and the content of the advert. Bob, what about sort of how you target them? I mean, we've heard a couple of ads there that are going to get placed on television in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. Very key swing states, important paths through to the White House for whoever will become president. But we live in an age of hyper-target, right? Where you can reach people through Facebook, TikTok, Instagram so deeply personally. You can have a clear account of what they're into, what they like, what kind of message will reach them and influence the way they vote. Do you see the GOP and the Democrats sort of, using that kind of targeted advertising to effectively?
Well, we better be. It's interesting. When Bill Clinton left office, I think there was a couple dozen websites, and that was about it. And as you pointed out, today it's a whole different world. And yes, the Democrats are going to make a big use. We have a lot of influencers, those people who follow, millions of people who follow this celebrity or that person. And that's going to be a big help to Harris and the rest of the Democrats. And the only reason we have targeted states, Pennsylvania is where I grew up and was born and grew up, is because of this old, from the 1700s electoral college system. Yeah, Democrats running for president always get the most votes, but in a couple of cases, including in 2016, we didn't win 270 electoral votes. So that's the system, and we will definitely go into Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and a couple other states. And obviously, over the next couple of months, as polling is done, private as well as public, there might be some adjustments on that. For instance, North Carolina has a Republican lieutenant governor running for governor, and that guy is very out there, very extreme. So North Carolina could be a state that the Democrats look at in the next 3 months.
All right. Okay, that's interesting. And John, I'm going to put you on the spot slightly here. I don't know if you can pull from history, but does money equal success? The more you spend, the more people vote for you?
No, absolutely not. The message is more important than the money. And if you have a unique message and the right messenger, now I'll give you a recent example, 2008, Hope and Change, Barack Obama, great messenger, great message, coming out of the Great Recession, boom, worked like mad and worked tremendously well. And I think the same thing might be happening now. Great message, pretty damn good messenger. She's new. This country's never elected a woman president, so we got to get over that hump. But this may be the year to do it. And she's got the right opponent who today put both his feet in his mouth about her race. And he keeps doing stuff like that. It's going to help her.
That's interesting, isn't it? The incumbent vice president could very well be the change candidate in this election. That's a fascinating dynamic, isn't it? Okay, can I just let's just finally, Bob, on the issue of advertising. And we've talked about the money. We've talked about the virality. Do you think that emotion works better, Bob, or sort of hard fact policy? What do people want? What are the ads that kind of really land with people?
Well, great events like 9/11, December 7th, 1941, obviously have big impact, but normally emotions are very, very big. I remember President Clinton running for re-election, in 96 against the Republican, Bob Dole. And he made some comment, he voted against Medicare back in 65, and he made some additional comment. So our Democratic ad was on a woman putting a baby into a crib. Boy, I think most women in America saw that ad, had tears in their eyes. And in this case, as John has pointed out, Trump keeps reminding people why they didn't elect him in 2020. They didn't want their teenage daughters seeing that guy on TV for the next 4 years. And I'll add this thing to what John said. In 1932, Herbert Hoover, the Great Depression was running, and Franklin Roosevelt's campaign manager told him, "You don't have to say anything, just keep your heart running." And then in 1952, the Korean War had been going on for a couple of years, and candidate Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander, he just said a few words: "I will go to Korea." And that sold him as the next president. And he went to Korea after he was elected. The war ended in 53. Should have never went on for a couple of years. That was MacArthur's mistake.
Yeah, how interesting. Okay, really fascinating, both of you. Bob, you mentioned 9/11. Can I just get your reaction to some news that's developed in the last half an hour? That 3 of the men, while we're on this issue, and we've got you with us, 3 of the men accused of plotting the 9/11 attack, the terrorist attacks in New York, have entered into a pre-trial agreement with the US Department of Defense. This is a really big development. They've been at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba for years without going on trial. As we understand it, the men will plead guilty in exchange for the prosecution agreeing not to seek the death penalty. John, what's your take?
Yeah, they're going to get life sentences. I think it's a good thing to put that behind us, even though some of the 9/11 victims have already come out this afternoon against this deal. But I think it's the way it's going to go, and they're going to be locked up in some place, and we're never going to hear from them again, and good riddance.
Does it, Bob, draw a line? I mean, can you ever draw a line under a moment like that?
Well, the Taliban would have moved a lot quicker, but in America, we have a judicial system created by our founders back in the 1700s, and it's developed, and much of it from the British system. And it's been 23 years. I mean, after 23 years, I think most Americans would say, let's move on, put these guys away forever, let them die in a prison on a needle.
Right. Okay. Lovely to have your company, both of you, tonight. Really appreciate your insights. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bob Holland, who is a member of the Democratic National Committee, and John Leboutillier, former Republican congressman